They vanished without a trace. 3 innocent lives lost in a single night. Decades later, a family photo surfaces that changes everything we thought we knew. What really happened to the triplets of Millfield? Stay with us as we unravel this chilling mystery step by step. Don't miss a moment. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications because the truth is darker and more shocking than you can imagine. The summer of 1983 was supposed to be ordinary, quiet, safe. The town of Millfield, Washington, nestled deep among the towering firs and mossy undergrowth of the Pacific Northwest, bore the kind of calm that lulled its residents into a sense of permanence. But August 17th, 1983, would tear through that calm like a jagged blade, shattering not only the serenity of that warm, golden morning, but also the lives of Mark and Evelyn Connors forever. Their house, a modest weather-beaten cottage at the edge of Millfield, sat on a thin sliver of land where forest met farmland. The air smelled of damp earth and pine resin, and the only sound was the occasional chirp of a robin or the distant rumble of a tractor. Mark, a sturdy man in his mid-30s with hands roughened by factory work and a quiet, steady gaze, had risen early, his mind already racing through the day's labor. Evelyn, a soft-spoken woman whose presence carried a fragile grace, was inside the kitchen, humming softly while preparing breakfast. Their 3 children, Emily, Jacob, and Noah, were barely 3 years old, but already the center of every waking thought and breath. Triplets, indistinguishable to most, but marked by the unique personalities that would eventually blossom. That morning, as the clock in the hallway ticked 9 a.m., the children had just finished their breakfast of cereal and juice. Their faces still smeared with the remnants of milk and sugar, they tumbled toward the back door, eager to play in the small patch of grass behind the house, their sanctuary of discovery. The backyard was a tangled border where wildflowers fought for sunlight, and the trees stretched tall and watchful. Evelyn stepped out to water the garden, eyes never leaving her children as they chased one another beneath the uneven canopy of shadows. The triplets shrieked with laughter, their voices weaving through the air like music, innocent, untethered. At 9:20 a.m., Mark kissed Evelyn's cheek goodbye, his worn leather boots crunching against the gravel driveway as he headed to the factory. The children clamored to follow him to the gate, their little hands reaching out, their eyes wide with adoration. He promised to return by evening, and with a final wave, he disappeared down the lane. For 15 minutes, the house was filled with the carefree joy of childhood. The sun spilled warmth across the yard, the light filtering through the swaying branches. Evelyn's heart swelled watching her children play, until at 9:35 a.m., the laughter stopped. She turned abruptly, searching for Emily's bright blue jacket, Jacob's eager grin, Noah's familiar curl of hair. Yet the yard was empty. The grass whispered softly in the breeze, but there were no footprints, no sign of where they had gone. Panic surged in Evelyn's chest like a violent storm, her breath shallow and rapid. Emily? Jacob? Noah? Her voice cracked, calling again, but only silence answered. The minutes stretched unbearably as Evelyn scoured the backyard, the edge of the woods, the fences, and the thickets. She ran inside to check the house. No children. She burst into the street, screaming for help, but neighbors were out, tending to their own gardens, unaware of the unfolding nightmare. Mark, frantic at work, received the call that shattered his world. His knees buckled. Hours later, the family home was flooded with police officers, their radios crackling, their faces set in grim determination. Search parties fanned out, combing the dense forest and surrounding roads. Drones and helicopters were decades away, so all efforts depended on the eyes and feet of the local volunteers. Flyers printed by hand went up on telephone poles, grocery stores, and school notice boards. Days passed like a black abyss. The town held its breath as searchers found nothing. No traces, no ransom notes, no witnesses who saw a stranger or a vehicle near the Connors' home. The Connors' anguish was a raw, open wound. Evelyn wept for hours, clutching worn toys, tracing the last moments with her trembling fingers. Mark paced the floor, his silence a heavy weight. Sleep fled their nights. The house echoed with memories and empty spaces where laughter once lived. The media descended like vultures, their bright cameras intruding on grief. Stories spread across newspapers and television, each retelling digging deeper into the rawness of loss. Some reporters whispered rumors, talk of cult activity in the nearby woods, a vanished child cult that had plagued the region in years past. Others suggested a tragic accident, yet no answers surfaced. Mark and Evelyn worked tirelessly, pleading with police, begging strangers for information, even following cold leads into dark, unfamiliar towns. Private investigators were hired. Psychics consulted. Nothing but silence. Over the months, the strain eroded their marriage. Arguments flared, born from pain and blame. Evelyn accused Mark of not watching the children closely enough. Mark lashed out at Evelyn for falling apart. Their friends drifted away, unable to witness the slow unraveling of a family in ruins. Every anniversary, every birthday was marked with hollow remembrance and aching absence. The children's rooms remained untouched, preserved like shrines to a time before grief. Years crept by. The Connors aged with the weight of hopelessness. Police files gathered dust. The case was declared cold. The town spoke less of the disappearance, burying the tragedy under layers of denial. Yet the truth lingered, waiting beneath the surface. Then, 35 years later, an unexpected discovery shattered the fragile peace. The old Connors house, abandoned and overgrown, was sold to a young couple intent on restoration. As they cleared the attic, a leather-bound trunk surfaced, locked and forgotten. Inside, among dusty papers and faded clothes, lay a photograph dated August 16, 1983, one day before the disappearance. It showed the triplets in their backyard, smiling under the sun. But there was something else, a shadow, faint and indistinct, lurking behind the children. A fourth figure, blurred and nearly transparent, yet unmistakably there. Mark and Evelyn, now aged and frail, were summoned. The photograph shattered their fragile denial. Questions long buried clawed back to life. Who or what was in that photo? Could the shadow hold the key to the mystery? The town awoke from its slumber, whispers surfacing anew. Uncovered were old reports of strange lights in the woods, unexplained sounds at night, and a forgotten investigation into occult symbols carved in a tree trunks miles from the Connors' home. Retired officers confessed they had been pressured to shelve certain leads. Locals recalled unfamiliar vehicles that came and went at odd hours. As the Connors delved into the past, they found themselves drawn into a labyrinth of secrets far darker and more complex than they had ever imagined. The children's disappearance was no accident. It was a piece of a sinister puzzle stretching far beyond Millfield. And as shadows lengthened over the town once more, the question remained, was the truth worth uncovering? The photograph hung heavy in the Connors' living room, an impossible relic that defied explanation. Mark sat stiffly in his worn recliner, the edges of the photo curled in his trembling hands, eyes locked on the blurred figure lurking just behind his children. Evelyn stood near the window, her gaze distant, as if the image had summoned ghosts from a past she had tried so desperately to bury. For 35 years, the wounds had scabbed over, but the discovery ripped them wide open again, exposing the rawness beneath. The silence that had once settled over Millfield now shattered, replaced by whispers that slithered through the town like a creeping fog. Mark's voice broke the quiet. How could we have missed this? That shadow backslash. It wasn't just a trick of the light. There's something there. Someone. Evelyn's breath caught. It's like they weren't alone. But who? And why didn't we see it before? How did no one notice? Their questions hung unanswered. The photo was the first tangible evidence in decades, a spectral finger pointing toward a truth hidden in the dark. The discovery reignited the investigation. Mark contacted Detective Harris, the man who had been a young officer at the time of the disappearance but was now retired. Harris agreed to reopen the case, driven by guilt and curiosity. The original police files, yellowed and brittle, revealed a series of peculiar details buried in routine reports. Witnesses had spoken of strange occurrences in the days leading to August 17, 1983. Unexplained lights flickering deep in the forest, odd vehicles with unmarked plates seen at unusual hours, and cryptic symbols etched into tree trunks. Harris sifted through these overlooked clues with fresh eyes. He reached out to former colleagues, neighbors, and locals who had once been too afraid or unwilling to speak. One name surfaced repeatedly: a reclusive man known only as Old Man Carver, a hermit who lived in the woods near Millfield and was rumored to dabble in occult practices. Several witnesses recalled seeing Carver wandering the town in the weeks before the children vanished, his presence unsettling and enigmatic. Mark and Evelyn decided to visit Carver's dilapidated cabin, now abandoned but preserved in eerie stillness. The air was thick with decay and forgotten secrets. Scrawled symbols covered the walls, faded drawings of figures that seemed to watch from the shadows. Among scattered papers, they found a diary, its pages yellowed, but the ink surprisingly fresh. Carver's entries spoke of a gateway between worlds, a thin veil that could be pierced with the right ritual, cryptic passages hinting at a dark obsession with bridging life and death. Mark shuddered as he read aloud. The children hold the key, the chosen ones. Through them, the veil will lift, and the darkness will walk the earth. Evelyn clutched the diary tightly, her mind racing. This could explain the shadow in the photo. But what kind of darkness? As the investigation deepened, the Connors' lives became consumed by a sinister web they struggled to comprehend. Old friends avoided them, fearful of stirring ancient evils. The media returned with renewed vigor, broadcasting theories ranging from kidnapping to supernatural interference. Meanwhile, Mark and Evelyn grew fragile under the weight of secrets and suspicion. Their home, once a refuge, now felt like a prison. Strange occurrences began to plague them: whispers in empty rooms, cold drafts that chilled to the bone, and fleeting glimpses of movement beyond the corner of their eyes. At night, Evelyn dreamed of the children calling to her from an endless forest, their voices distorted and fading. Mark found himself drawn to the woods where the disappearance began, compelled by a force he could neither name nor resist. One evening, while exploring the thick underbrush near their property, Mark discovered a small clearing marked by ancient trees carved with symbols matching those in Carver's diary. In the center lay a shallow pit, filled with old bones. Animal, he hoped, but the sight twisted his stomach. Nearby, half buried beneath dirt and moss, he unearthed a small leather-bound notebook. Its pages were filled with drawings of the triplets, their faces circled and crossed with strange markings. His hands trembled as he realized the notebook had belonged to someone close, someone who had watched the children in secret. The deeper they dug, the darker the truth became. Millfield was not the peaceful town it appeared. Beneath its surface simmered a history of disappearances and unspoken horrors, tied to shadowy cults and ancient rituals dating back generations. Police reopened old cold cases, uncovering links between the Connors tragedy and a string of missing children from surrounding towns. None ever found, all vanishing without trace. With each revelation, Mark and Evelyn teetered on the edge of sanity. Their grief transformed into a desperate hunger for answers, a willingness to confront the darkness no matter the cost. One night, as a violent storm raged outside, Evelyn awoke to a faint knocking at the door. Opening it revealed a stranger, soaked and shivering, claiming knowledge of the triplets' fate. The stranger spoke in hushed tones of a secret society operating in the shadows, seeking to harness the innocence of children to open a doorway to another realm. He warned that the Connors family had been marked long before the disappearance, targeted by forces beyond comprehension. Mark refused to believe such tales, but Evelyn's eyes, reflecting fear and longing, told a different story. Together, they faced a horrifying choice: whether to surrender to the growing darkness or fight to reclaim their children and their lives. The photograph was no longer just a haunting image. It was a key, a warning, a promise that the past was far from over. And as the walls closed in around the Connors family, the question remained, could love and hope survive the shadows? Or would the darkness claim them all? Mark sat alone in the dim glow of the kitchen light, the leather-bound notebook resting heavily on the worn table before him. The storm outside thrashed against the windows like a warning, rattling the fragile calm they had clung to for decades. Every page of that notebook whispered secrets, cryptic symbols scrawled alongside drawings of Emily, Jacob, and Noah, three faces so familiar, yet forever lost in time. His hands trembled as he traced the strange markings. There was something meticulous about them, as if the author had observed the children with an unsettling devotion. A presence had watched from the shadows, recording, planning. Evelyn's soft footsteps echoed behind him. She placed a trembling hand on his shoulder. "Mark, we need to tell someone. The police can't keep this buried. The town needs to know." He shook his head slowly. "Who would believe us? That some cult, or whatever this is, took our children? After all these years?" Her eyes burned with fierce determination. "If we don't speak, nothing changes. The children deserve justice. We deserve answers." Days turned into restless nights as Mark and Evelyn prepared to confront the darkness long ignored. They met with Detective Harris again, sharing the diary, the notebook, and the photograph. Harris, weathered by years of failed investigations, felt the weight of their desperation and the eerie consistency of the new evidence. Together, they revisited the clearing where Mark had found the pit. Forensic experts arrived, carefully excavating the area. To the Connors' horror, fragments of children's clothing and toys were discovered, relics that had vanished with the triplets all those years ago. But no bodies. The discovery sent shockwaves through Millfield, reviving old fears and stirring unrest. Residents recalled whispers of gatherings in the forest, odd rituals rumored to have been practiced by a secretive group that had evaded law enforcement's grasp for decades. One elder recalled a time when children were offered as sacrifices to bridge the worlds, a chilling folklore thought to be nothing more than myth. But for Mark and Evelyn, myth had become reality. As media attention intensified, so did the threats. Anonymous calls warned them to stop digging or suffer consequences. Their home was vandalized, symbols matching those in Carver's diary painted on their walls. The Connors' fight was no longer just for their children. It was a battle for survival. Late one night, Evelyn awoke to whispers floating through the house. Shadows seemed to twist in corners, and faint giggles echoed, mocking, haunting. She followed the sounds to the attic, where the trunk had been found. Inside, a hidden compartment revealed a bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon. The letters, written in shaky handwriting, were for a woman named Lillian, a long-forgotten resident who had vanished shortly before the triplets. Her words spoke of terror, of a cult's reach spreading through Millfield, and her desperate attempts to protect her own children. Reading them, Evelyn realized the truth was worse than she feared. The cult had operated in the town for years, their influence buried beneath layers of silence and fear. With renewed resolve, Mark and Evelyn reached out to others. Families of missing children, former cult members turned informants, anyone willing to speak. Pieces of a dark puzzle emerged. Secret meetings in the woods, coded messages carved into trees, rituals performed to open a veil between worlds. One informant revealed the cult's obsession with triplets, believed to hold unique power in these ceremonies. The Connors triplets had been targeted for this reason. As the evidence mounted, the town's facade crumbled, exposing a legacy of horror that had festered in silence. Mark and Evelyn became symbols of resistance, their pain fueling a movement to unearth the truth. But the cult was not easily defeated. Shadows lurked in every corner, allies hidden among the townsfolk. One night, Mark received a package. Inside, a single photograph showing the triplets in a place neither he nor Evelyn recognized. The background was blurred, but something unmistakable caught his eye. The same shadowy figure from the attic photo, clearer now, standing just beyond the children's reach. The message was clear: someone, or something, was still watching. Fear clawed at their resolve, but surrender was not an option. Together, they prepared to face the darkness head-on, risking everything for the chance to bring their children home, or at least uncover the truth buried beneath 35 years of silence. The shadows of Millfield had lengthened, and the Connors family was standing in the center of the gathering storm. The air was thick with tension as Mark and Evelyn stood once again at the edge of the dense forest that had become both their prison and battleground. The trees loomed like silent sentinels, their gnarled branches whispering secrets only the wind could understand. The photograph, the one that arrived mysteriously, was clutched tightly in Mark's hand, the blurred image of the shadowed figure haunting his every thought. Days had slipped by in a haze of sleepless nights and feverish research. The town of Millfield was fracturing. Some residents whispered of curses and forbidden rites. Others spoke in hushed tones of protecting family, of loyalties that ran deeper than law or morality. The Connors had become pariahs in their own home, their quest for truth casting them into the darkest corners of human fear. Evelyn's hands trembled as she traced the words on a yellowed piece of paper, an old map found tucked within Lillian's letters. It marked locations in the woods, strange symbols encircling a central clearing not far from their property. It was a place no one dared speak of, a place rumored to be the heart of the cult's power. Together, they decided to confront the forest itself. Under the cover of twilight, Mark and Evelyn ventured into the woods, the only light their flickering flashlights cutting through the thickening dusk. Every snap of twig underfoot sounded like a gunshot in the stillness. Every shadow seemed to pulse with life. The air was pungent with decay and moss, and the distant call of an owl pierced the silence. As they approached the clearing marked on the map, the atmosphere shifted. The ground was bare, unervingly smooth, and etched deep into the earth were intricate carvings, circles, lines, symbols that pulsed faintly in the fading light. The unmistakable scent of burning wood lingered, mingling with a metallic tang that made Evelyn's stomach churn. In the center, a stone altar stood, cracked and worn by time, but unmistakably a relic of something ancient and dark. Mark's voice was barely a whisper. "This is it. This must be where they brought the children." A sudden rustle from the surrounding trees made them both freeze. Shapes shifted just beyond the flashlight beams, elusive and silent. Panic surged, but they pressed on, desperate to uncover any trace of their lost children. Near the altar, they found remnants of cloth, threadbare and stained, along with fragments of toys, identical to those the triplets had cherished. The realization hit them like a physical blow. The place was a nexus of sorrow and terror. Suddenly, Evelyn stumbled on a buried object, a small wooden box, sealed tight but surprisingly well preserved. With shaking hands, she pried it open to reveal a collection of faded photographs and brittle letters, written in a delicate script. The photographs depicted the triplets, smiling and unaware, alongside shadowy figures whose faces were obscured by hoods and darkness. The letters were confessions, apologies penned by someone named Miriam, a former cult member racked by guilt. Miriam's words revealed a horrifying truth. The cult had believed the triplets were the key to breaking the barrier between worlds, but something went wrong. The ritual had failed, or perhaps succeeded too well. The children had been taken into a realm beyond human understanding, trapped in a place where time and reality warped. Tears streamed down Evelyn's face as she read. They are not gone, but they are not here. Somewhere in between, lost to us. Mark gripped her hand tightly. We have to find a way to bring them back. Their search led them deeper into forbidden lore, ancient texts, and whispered legends. A hidden sect within Millfield had maintained the cult's practices long after the original group vanished, their rituals evolving, but their purpose unchanged. As the Connors delved into the shadowed history, they faced mounting opposition. Threats became physical, broken windows, shadowy figures lurking near their home, and an unshakable feeling of being watched. One night, Evelyn awoke to find strange symbols etched into their bedroom walls, glowing faintly in the dark. The house itself seemed alive with menace. But amid the terror, a glimmer of hope emerged. A local historian, Professor Clark, offered to help decode the symbols and map the rituals. His research pointed to a possible way to reach the children, through an ancient gateway said to exist within the heart of the forest. Armed with knowledge and fragile hope, Mark, Evelyn, and Clark prepared to confront the darkness once more. They knew the journey would test every ounce of their courage and sanity. Yet, the love that bound them to their children fueled a desperate resolve. In the shadows of Millfield's cursed woods, the line between this world and the next was thin, and the Connors were about to cross it. The night was suffocatingly still as Mark, Evelyn, and Professor Clark gathered their gear beneath a churning sky heavy with thunder. The forest loomed like a vast cathedral of shadows, each ancient tree a silent witness to secrets older than memory. The air was thick with moisture and the sharp tang of pine, but beneath it lay a deeper, more primal scent, the unmistakable odor of decay and forgotten pain. They set out at dusk, their flashlights carving narrow paths through the darkness, illuminating twisted roots and tangled underbrush that seemed eager to claim unwary feet. Every step deeper into the woods carried with it a sense of trespassing on something forbidden, a boundary long respected, now dangerously breached. Clark's voice was low and steady as he guided them along the map's cryptic markers. The gateway should be just ahead. It's where the veil between worlds thins, where the ritual was intended to open a passage. Mark's heart pounded. For 35 years, hope had been a cruel mirage. Tonight, it was their last chance. As they entered a clearing, the ground beneath their feet shifted. The air grew colder, biting at their skin like invisible teeth. At the center stood a massive stone circle, covered in moss and faintly glowing with phosphorescent runes. The stones hummed with a resonance that seemed to pulse in rhythm with their own heartbeats. Evelyn swallowed hard, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder. "Is this the gateway?" Clark nodded, carefully unfolding an ancient parchment. "The texts say it can be activated, but it requires a sacrifice, not of life, but of something deeply personal, an offering of love, memory, and truth." Mark clenched his fists. "Whatever it takes, we'll do it." They prepared a small altar at the center of the circle, placing relics belonging to the triplets, a toy car, a worn blanket, a crayon drawing. Evelyn whispered the children's names into the stillness, her voice breaking as tears welled. Then Clark began chanting in a language lost to time, his voice weaving a haunting melody that seemed to pull at the very fabric of the night. Suddenly, the air shimmered, the runes glowing brighter until the clearing was bathed in an eerie light. Shadows danced at the edges of their vision, and a cold wind swept through the circle. Mark felt a tug at his soul, a whisper on the wind that spoke of worlds beyond sight. From the depths of the glowing circle, shapes began to emerge, flickering, ephemeral figures that shimmered like mist yet held unmistakable forms. Among them, 3 small silhouettes appeared, fragile and trembling. Evelyn gasped, "The children!" But the figures wavered, flickering between this world and another. Their faces were pale, eyes wide with confusion and fear, as if trapped between waking and dreaming. Mark reached out, but the figures recoiled, caught in the liminal space between worlds. The ritual had opened a gateway, but the triplets were not free. Clark's voice grew urgent. "They are trapped in the in-between. We must anchor them, bind their souls to this place with our love and memory." Evelyn stepped forward, tears streaming as she recited every lullaby, every whispered promise, every memory etched deep in her heart. Mark joined her, their voices entwining in a desperate plea. Slowly, The flickering forms stabilized, their outlines growing clearer, their faces softening. The children's voices, faint but real, echoed through the night. "We're here, Mama, Daddy." But the moment was fragile. Suddenly, a chilling wind tore through the clearing, extinguishing their candles and plunging them into darkness. A voice, low and guttural, echoed from the shadows, an unseen presence warning them to abandon their quest. Fear gripped them, but their resolve hardened. In that moment, Mark realized the true battle was only beginning. The darkness guarding the gateway would not relinquish its hold easily. With every ounce of strength, they vowed to fight against shadows, silence, and time itself to bring their children home. As the night stretched on, the forest seemed to watch and wait, alive with secrets, horrors, and a hope that flickered like a dying flame. The forest seemed to hold its breath as the first light of dawn bled weakly through the dense canopy. Mark's muscles ached, his throat raw from the chants and desperate pleas that had echoed into the night. Yet, despite the flickering hope they had kindled, the children remained trapped, ghostly, fragile, caught in the cold twilight between worlds. Evelyn clutched the small hand-shaped imprint on the toy car, a fragile token of her children's presence. Her eyes, rimmed red with exhaustion and tears, searched the mist swirling around the stone circle. Somewhere beyond that veil, her children waited, lost, frightened, and unreachable. Professor Clark, his face pale but resolute, paced slowly, studying the ancient runes etched into the stones. The ritual opened a door, but it's a threshold, a doorway that requires a key to fully cross. That key is not something physical. It's bound to the essence of those who pass. Mark's jaw tightened. Then what is the key? What do we need to give? Clark's gaze dropped, haunted. Love alone might not be enough. The texts speak of sacrifice, not of blood, but of something infinitely more personal, memory. To bring them back, one must surrender a piece of their past, something precious and irreplaceable. Evelyn's breath hitched. Our memories? But if we lose those, who will we be? Clark nodded gravely. It's the ultimate. The perils ahead, traps of fire, falling stones, and illusions crafted to break the mind. As they ventured deeper, the labyrinth seemed alive, breathing with malevolent intent. Shadows stretched and twisted, whispers curled around their ears, echoes of lost souls and broken promises. At one point, Sarah faltered, her face pale as a spectral hand seemed to reach from the walls, grasping at her. Mark steadied her, whispering promises of safety, but the encounter left them shaken. After hours of navigating the torturous maze, they reached a vast chamber bathed in an eerie blue light. At its center rested the aegis, a pendant wrought from silver and obsidian, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. As Mark reached for the relic, the chamber shuddered violently. From the darkness emerged hooded figures, the cult's remnants, desperate to claim the artifact. A fierce confrontation erupted. Words gave way to screams and struggle, the air thick with the scent of sweat and desperation. Evelyn, clutching the triplets close, recited protective prayers, her voice steady despite the chaos. Mark wrestled with one attacker, his heart pounding with fear and fury. The fight was brutal, raw, and primal, a battle not just for an object, but for the very soul of their family. In the fray, the aegis slipped from its pedestal, its pulse growing stronger. Mark seized it, feeling a surge of energy course through him, powerful, ancient, and terrifying. The cultists recoiled, their faces twisted in rage and fear, before retreating into the shadows. With the artifact in hand, the Connors began their ascent, the labyrinth seeming less hostile now, as if acknowledging their triumph. Back in the daylight, Father Donovan explained the Aegis's purpose. It could seal the veil, severing the twisted bond that had ensnared the triplets and ensuring the cult's dark power would never rise again. But using it came with a cost. The bearer would become a guardian, bound eternally to watch over the veil, a sentinel between worlds. Mark looked at his children, their fragile smiles filling his heart with fierce love. He understood the choice before him. That night, beneath the stars, Mark stood once more at the edge of the clearing. The triplets held his hands, their presence a beacon of hope amidst the lingering shadows. Evelyn's tears glistened in the moonlight as Mark raised the aegis, chanting the ancient words Father Donovan had taught them. The air thickened, shimmering with power as the veil began to close, a tapestry of light and shadow weaving into a final seal. Mark felt a pull, a gentle tug at his soul, as the artifact's power claimed him. He smiled through the pain, knowing his sacrifice meant safety, for his children, for Evelyn, for Millfield. As the first light of dawn broke, the forest fell silent. The veil was sealed. The cult's shadows faded, scattered like mist under the morning sun. And though Mark was no longer by their side, his presence lingered, a guardian unseen but ever watchful. Evelyn held the triplets close, their laughter pure and bright, a testament to resilience and love. Millfield breathed freely once more, but the echoes of darkness remained, a reminder that some battles leave scars invisible to the eye but etched deep in the soul. And in the quiet moments, when the wind whispered through the trees, the Connors family knew that love had triumphed over shadow. For now, the weeks following Mark's sacrifice passed in a surreal haze. The Connors family, once shattered by loss and haunted by shadows, now grappled with a new reality, one tinged with bittersweet victory and lingering sorrow. The veil was sealed, the cult's grip broken, yet the wounds ran deep beneath the surface of their fragile peace. Evelyn found herself watching the triplets closely. They seemed whole, but the trauma etched invisible scars in their eyes, in the quiet moments when laughter ceased and silence settled like a heavy fog. Each child carried fragments of a world none of them could fully understand, a world that had both held them prisoner and shown them wonders beyond human comprehension. Jacob, the eldest by mere minutes, became distant, retreating into himself with a stubborn quietness that worried Evelyn most. Noah, wild and restless, struggled to hold onto the joy that once came so easily. Emily, delicate and perceptive, often sat staring into space as if listening to voices only she could hear. Evelyn's nights were restless, dreams haunted by flickering shadows and fractured memories. She often woke with a start, heart pounding as she fought to hold onto the fragments of love that tethered her to reality. The town of Millfield, meanwhile, struggled to shake the weight of its buried darkness. The truth about the cult had shaken its foundations. Families whispered of hidden sins and half-forgotten horrors. Some streets grew quiet as old wounds reopened. Others rallied, determined to protect what remained. Evelyn took up the mantle of protector, weaving herself into the lives of other families, determined to ensure no other child would suffer as hers had. With Sarah's help, she organized community meetings, support groups, and neighborhood watches, rallying Millfield to face its past and guard its future. Yet, even as the town healed, shadows lingered. One afternoon, a letter arrived, sealed with an unfamiliar emblem, an intricately designed eye surrounded by thorn vines. Inside, a single message. The veil is sealed, but the darkness never sleeps. Watch your children. Watch yourselves. Asterisk. Evelyn's hands trembled as she showed the letter to Sarah and the local sheriff, who had reluctantly begun to believe in the strange events. The warning was clear. The cult's remnants had not vanished. They lurked, waiting for a moment of weakness. That evening, a meeting convened at the town hall, gathering Millfield's most trusted. Discussions turned from celebration to vigilance. Plans were laid for constant watchfulness, for vigilance against threats unseen but felt. Amid the tensions, a new figure arrived in Millfield, a historian named Dr. Lila Winters, whose research into occult practices and ancient societies was renowned. She reached out to Evelyn, offering insight into the cult's origins and a warning that their fight might be far from over. Dr. Winters explained that the cult's roots extended centuries back, tracing to secret societies that had infiltrated many towns across the country. Their obsession with threshold children, those born under unique circumstances like triplets, was a dark tradition, believed to unlock power between worlds. Evelyn listened, both fascinated and terrified, as Winters described rituals designed not only to open portals, but to bind souls, a fate that had nearly claimed her children. Together, they pored over ancient texts and town records, uncovering evidence of similar disappearances spanning generations, all tied to the cult's hidden influence. But with knowledge came danger. Late one night, Sarah was attacked near her home, a chilling reminder that the cult's enemies still moved in the shadows. Though she survived, the assault sent shockwaves through the community, shattering the illusion of safety. The Connors family, once victims, now stood as warriors on the front line of a hidden war. In response, Evelyn and Sarah began training local volunteers in self-defense and surveillance, transforming Millfield into a bastion against darkness. Meanwhile, the triplets showed signs of change. Jacob's silence deepened, but in rare moments he spoke cryptic phrases about doors and waiting, as if caught between worlds still. Noah's restless energy sometimes morphed into unsettling episodes where he would stare blankly, whispering names unknown. Emily's perceptiveness became a double-edged sword, her gaze catching things others couldn't see. Concerned, Evelyn sought help from Dr. Winters, who suggested that the children's time between worlds had left residual effects, psychic scars that might manifest as visions or episodes. They began a regimen of therapy, ritual cleansing, and grounding exercises designed to help the children anchor themselves in reality. One afternoon, while exploring the attic, Emily found a hidden compartment behind a loose panel. Inside lay a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed but filled with detailed accounts of the cult's practices and members, names, dates, and ominous plans spanning decades. The journal was signed with a single initial, M. Evelyn's blood ran cold. Miriam, the very woman whose letters had first exposed the cult's twisted nature. As the Connors delved into the journal, they uncovered horrifying details, planned ceremonies yet to be enacted, and a prophecy that the triplets were destined to unlock a final gateway, one that could bring untold devastation. The tension tightened like a noose around Millfield. With the town watching, the Connors prepared for what might come. A final confrontation to protect not only their family, but the fragile boundary between worlds. But time was slipping away. One moonless night, a scream shattered the silence. A scream that echoed through the forest and into the hearts of all who heard it. The cult was striking back. The scream tore through the stillness like a blade, shattering the fragile peace that had settled over Millfield. Evelyn bolted upright, heart hammering, as images of past terrors flooded her mind. She could hear the distant echoes, faint at first, then growing louder, a chorus of frightened voices carried on the cold night air. Without hesitation, Evelyn threw on her coat and grabbed her keys. The triplets stirred in their beds, eyes wide with confusion and fear, but she whispered assurances as best she could, promising she would return quickly. Mark's absence was a constant ache, but she couldn't allow it to paralyze her. Outside, the town was alive with frantic movement. Neighbors spilled into the streets, their faces pale, eyes scanning the dark tree line for signs of danger. Flames flickered in the distance, smoke curling skyward from the edge of the forest. Evelyn ran toward the chaos, Sarah and Dr. Winters close behind, the sounds of sirens approaching. At the forest's edge, a group of residents gathered near a makeshift barrier, their faces marked by dread. A small cabin, long abandoned, was engulfed in flames, the fire's orange glow casting eerie shadows on the trees. This was where they met, a shaken man whispered. The cult's new hideout. They were planning something. The weight of those words settled heavily on Evelyn. The cult was regrouping, their dark ambitions undeterred by defeat. As the fire raged, a figure darted from the shadows, young, cloaked, and desperate. The crowd tensed, but before anyone could react, the figure collapsed, gasping for breath. Evelyn rushed forward. "Who are you? What do you know?" The figure's eyes flickered with terror. "They're coming. The final ceremony. The veil will break again, unless the triplets stop it." The words chilled Evelyn to her core. Back at their home, the Connors scrambled to prepare. Dr. Winters pored over the ancient texts, desperate to find a way to counter the impending ritual. Sarah organized the townsfolk into watches, every moment steeped in urgency. The triplets, now more aware of the looming threat, clung to Evelyn and each other. Yet even their small hands trembled with the weight of their destiny. Jacob, once silent, began muttering fragments of prophecy he had no memory of learning. Phrases like the 3 keys, the shattered seal, and the binding light. Evelyn and Dr. Winters pieced together the meaning. The triplets were not just victims, but guardians, their very existence intertwined with the fate of worlds. As the night deepened, Evelyn stood at the window, watching the forest edge. Shapes moved in the darkness, figures cloaked in shadows, circling, waiting. The final ceremony was near. In the heart of the forest, at the ancient stone circle, cultists gathered, chanting in a language that twisted the air and chilled the bones. The earth beneath their feet seemed to pulse with dark energy, a living entity feeding on their twisted faith. Evelyn's resolve hardened. With Sarah, Dr. Winters, and the brave townsfolk, she led the triplets into the night, their path illuminated by lanterns and fierce determination. The forest welcomed them with whispering leaves and unseen eyes, a gauntlet of unseen threats. At the clearing, the battle began. Words of defiance met chants of dark power. The ground trembled, the sky roiled with unnatural storms. Jacob stepped forward, hands glowing with a pale light. Noah and Emily joined, their energies intertwining, forming a shield against the encroaching darkness. The cultists faltered, their chants breaking like waves against a rocky shore. Evelyn called upon every memory, every prayer, pouring love and hope into the night. The stone circle blazed with radiant light, sealing the veil once more. With a final cry, the cultists vanished into the shadows, their power broken. Exhausted but victorious, the Connors embraced, tears mingling with laughter, a family battered but unbroken. Millfield breathed anew. But the echoes of the night lingered, a reminder that darkness sleeps but never dies. And the triplets, now true guardians, carried a burden that would shape their lives forever. In the days that followed, Millfield awoke to a fragile peace. Yet beneath the surface, the currents of change ran deep and unpredictable. The battle at the stone circle had shattered the cult's immediate threat, but Evelyn knew that darkness was never truly defeated. It only retreated, waiting for cracks to widen and vigilance to falter. The triplets, once fragile and broken, began to grow into their new roles with a quiet strength. Jacob's silence gave way to thoughtful words and cautious smiles. Noah's restless energy found purpose in protecting others, and Emily's perceptiveness became a guiding light for those around her. Yet, the weight of their destiny was a constant presence. Dreams haunted them, visions of worlds beyond, whispers of forgotten rites, and glimpses of shadows lurking just beyond sight. Evelyn watched them with a mother's fierce love and a guardian's wary eye, knowing the road ahead would never be easy. Dr. Winters continued her research, unraveling threads of ancient lore and modern threats. She warned that cults like the one in Millfield were not isolated phenomena, but part of a sprawling network woven through history and geography. Dark societies whose reach extended far beyond the town's borders. Sarah, once a frightened outcast, had become a pillar of strength, rallying the community and training new defenders. Her knowledge and courage were vital, but the scars of past attacks reminded everyone of the stakes. Evelyn and Sarah established a secret council, dedicated to monitoring occult threats and safeguarding their town's fragile boundaries. They shared what they learned cautiously, aware that even trusted allies could be infiltrated by shadows. The journal Miriam had left behind became their guide and warning, a grim testament to the cost of secrets and the resilience of hope. One afternoon, as Evelyn and the triplets walked near the edge of the forest, Emily stopped suddenly, eyes fixed on a cluster of trees where a faint shimmer hovered, like a ripple in the air. "Mom," Emily whispered, "I think they're still there." Watching, Evelyn's heart clenched. She knelt beside her daughter, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "We're stronger now," she said softly, "and we will protect each other, no matter what." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the town, Evelyn knew their fight was far from over. But for the first time in decades, hope glowed bright. The triplets were home. The veil was sealed, and Millfield, scarred but unbroken, faced the future with eyes wide open. The Connors family had journeyed through darkness, sacrifice, and the unimaginable, and emerged bound not only by blood but by love that transcended worlds. The haunting mystery of 1983 had finally found its reckoning. But the echoes of the impossible would linger, whispers carried on the wind, a family photo that revealed not just a past, but a promise. A promise that love, even in the face of shadows, could never truly vanish. The years after the final confrontation at the stone circle unfolded with a strange mixture of peace and persistent unease. Millfield, scarred by decades of darkness, had transformed. The streets bustled with life again, children played without fear, and neighbors exchanged greetings with genuine warmth. Yet beneath the surface, the town carried the invisible weight of its past, like an ancient wound slowly healing but never quite forgotten. Evelyn stood in the window of their modest home, watching the sun set behind the forest's edge. The triplets played quietly in the yard, their laughter a balm to a soul long battered by loss and fear. But even as she smiled, a part of her remained alert, always listening for the faintest echo of the shadows that once threatened to consume them. The photograph, the one that had appeared mysteriously 35 years earlier, still sat framed on the mantelpiece. Its image seemed to shimmer faintly in the firelight, a silent reminder of the impossible journey they had endured. The faces of the triplets, young and innocent, contrasted starkly with the knowledge of what had transpired, of the worlds they had touched and the darkness they had survived. Mark's absence was a constant ache in Evelyn's heart. His sacrifice had sealed the veil and saved their family, but had left a void that no amount of love could fill. She often found herself reaching for him in dreams, fleeting moments of warmth and whispered promises, before waking to the cold reality of his absence. One evening, as the family gathered around the dinner table, a knock at the door interrupted the quiet. Evelyn opened it to find a man she didn't recognize. Tall, with silver-streaked hair and eyes that gleamed with a strange intensity. "Good evening," he said, his voice calm but firm. "My name is Elias Crane. I come with a message and a warning." Evelyn's heart quickened. She stepped aside to let him in, wary but curious. Crane spoke without hesitation. "The veil you helped seal is strong, but not impenetrable. There are forces far beyond the cult that you faced, entities older than time itself, watching and waiting. Your children's connection to the other realms makes them unique, valuable." The triplets exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier innocence replaced by cautious awareness. Crane continued, "I represent a coalition, guardians who seek to protect the balance between worlds. We've been monitoring Millfield for." Flooded her mind. She could hear the distant echoes, faint at first, then growing louder, a chorus of frightened voices carried on the cold night air. Without hesitation, Evelyn threw on her coat and grabbed her keys. The triplets stirred in their beds, eyes wide with confusion and fear, but she whispered assurances as best she could, promising she would return quickly. Mark's absence was a constant ache, but she couldn't allow it to paralyze her. Outside, the town was alive with frantic movement. Neighbors spilled into the streets, their faces pale, eyes scanning the dark tree line for signs of danger. Flames flickered in the distance, smoke curling skyward from the edge of the forest. Evelyn ran toward the chaos, Sarah and Dr. Winters close behind, the sounds of sirens approaching. At the forest's edge, a group of residents gathered near a makeshift barrier, their faces marked by dread. A small cabin, long abandoned, was engulfed in flames, the fire's orange glow casting eerie shadows on the trees. This was where they met, a shaken man whispered. The cult's new hideout. They were planning something. The weight of those words settled heavily on Evelyn. The cult was regrouping, their dark ambitions undeterred by defeat. As the fire raged, a figure darted from the shadows, young, cloaked, and desperate. The crowd tensed, but before anyone could react, the figure collapsed, gasping for breath. Evelyn rushed forward. "Who are you? What do you know?" The figure's eyes flickered with terror. "They're coming. The final ceremony. The veil will break again, unless the triplets stop it." The words chilled Evelyn to her core. Back at their home, the Connors scrambled to prepare. Dr. Winters pored over the ancient texts, desperate to find a way to counter the impending ritual. Sarah organized the townsfolk into watches, every moment steeped in urgency. The triplets, now more aware of the looming threat, clung to Evelyn and each other. Yet even their small hands trembled with the weight of their destiny. Jacob, once silent, began muttering fragments of prophecy he had no memory of learning, phrases like the 3 keys, the shattered seal, and the binding light. Evelyn and Dr. Winters pieced together the meaning. The triplets were not just victims, but guardians, their very existence intertwined with the fate of worlds. As the night deepened, Evelyn stood at the window, watching the forest edge. Shapes moved in the darkness, figures cloaked in shadows, circling, waiting. The final ceremony was near. In the heart of the forest, at the ancient stone circle, cultists gathered, chanting in a language that twisted the air and chilled the bones. The earth beneath their feet seemed to pulse with dark energy, a living entity feeding on their twisted faith. Evelyn's resolve hardened. With Sarah, Dr. Winters, and the brave townsfolk, she led the triplets into the night, their path illuminated by lanterns and fierce determination. The forest welcomed them with whispering leaves and unseen eyes, a gauntlet of unseen threats. At the clearing, the battle began. Words of defiance met chants of dark power. The ground trembled, the sky roiled with unnatural storms. Jacob stepped forward, hands glowing with a pale light. Noah and Emily joined, their energies intertwining, forming a shield against the encroaching darkness. The cultists faltered, their chants breaking like waves against a rocky shore. Evelyn called upon every memory, every prayer, pouring love and hope into the night. The stone circle blazed with radiant light, sealing the veil once more. With a final cry, the cultists vanished into the shadows, their power broken. Exhausted but victorious, the Connors embraced, tears mingling with laughter, a family battered but unbroken. Millfield breathed anew. But the echoes of the night lingered, a reminder that darkness sleeps but never dies. And the triplets, now true guardians, carried a burden that would shape their lives forever. In the days that followed, Millfield awoke to a fragile peace. Yet beneath the surface, the currents of change ran deep and unpredictable. The battle at the stone circle had shattered the cult's immediate threat, but Evelyn knew that darkness was never truly defeated. It only retreated, waiting for cracks to widen and vigilance to falter. The triplets, once fragile and broken, began to grow into their new roles with a quiet strength. Jacob's silence gave way to thoughtful words and cautious smiles. Noah's restless energy found purpose in protecting others, and Emily's perceptiveness became a guiding light for those around her. Yet, the weight of their destiny was a constant presence. Dreams haunted them, visions of worlds beyond, whispers of forgotten rites, and glimpses of shadows lurking just beyond sight. Evelyn watched them with a mother's fierce love and a guardian's wary eye, knowing the road ahead would never be easy. Dr. Winters continued her research, unraveling threads of ancient lore and modern threats. She warned that cults like the one in Millfield were not isolated phenomena, but part of a sprawling network woven through history and geography, dark societies whose reach extended far beyond the town's borders. Sarah, once a frightened outcast, had become a pillar of strength, rallying the community and training new defenders. Her knowledge and courage were vital, but the scars of past attacks reminded everyone of the stakes. Evelyn and Sarah established a secret council dedicated to monitoring occult threats and safeguarding their town's fragile boundaries. They shared what they learned cautiously, aware that even trusted allies could be infiltrated by shadows. The journal Miriam had left behind became their guide and warning, a grim testament to the cost of secrets and the resilience of hope. One afternoon, as Evelyn and the triplets walked near the edge of the forest, Emily stopped suddenly, eyes fixed on a cluster of trees where a faint shimmer hovered, like a ripple in the air. "Mom," Emily whispered, "I think they're still there." Watching, Evelyn's heart clenched. She knelt beside her daughter, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "We're stronger now," she said softly, "and we will protect each other, no matter what." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the town, Evelyn knew their fight was far from over. But for the first time in decades, hope glowed bright. The triplets were home. The veil was sealed, and Millfield, scarred but unbroken, faced the future with eyes wide open. The Connors family had journeyed through darkness, sacrifice, and the unimaginable, and emerged bound not only by blood but by love that transcended worlds. The haunting mystery of 1983 had finally found its reckoning. But the echoes of the impossible would linger, whispers carried on the wind, a family photo that revealed not just a past, but a promise. A promise that love, even in the face of shadows, could never truly vanish. The years after the final confrontation at the stone circle unfolded with a strange mixture of peace and persistent unease. Millfield, scarred by decades of darkness, had transformed. The streets bustled with life again, children played without fear, and neighbors exchanged greetings with genuine warmth. Yet beneath the surface, the town carried the invisible weight of its past, like an ancient wound slowly healing, but never quite forgotten. Evelyn stood in the window of their modest home, watching the sun set behind the forest's edge. The triplets played quietly in the yard, their laughter a balm to a soul long battered by loss and fear. But even as she smiled, a part of her remained alert, always listening for the faintest echo of the shadows that once threatened to consume them. The photograph, the one that had appeared mysteriously 35 years earlier, still sat framed on the mantelpiece. Its image seemed to shimmer faintly in the firelight, a silent reminder of the impossible journey they had endured. The faces of the triplets, young and innocent, contrasted starkly with the knowledge of what had transpired, of the worlds they had touched and the darkness they had survived. Mark's absence was a constant ache in Evelyn's heart. His sacrifice had sealed the veil and saved their family, but had left a void that no amount of love could fill. She often found herself reaching for him in dreams, fleeting moments of warmth and whispered promises, before waking to the cold reality of his absence. One evening, as the family gathered around the dinner table, a knock at the door interrupted the quiet. Evelyn opened it to find a man she didn't recognize. Tall, with silver-streaked hair and eyes that gleamed with a strange intensity. "Good evening," he said, his voice calm but firm. "My name is Elias Crane. I come with a message and a warning." Evelyn's heart quickened. She stepped aside to let him in, wary but curious. Crane spoke without hesitation. "The veil you helped seal is strong, but not impenetrable. There are forces far beyond the cult that you've faced, entities older than time itself, watching and waiting. Your children's connection to the other realms makes them unique, valuable." The triplets exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier innocence replaced by cautious awareness. Crane continued, I represent a coalition, guardians who seek to protect the balance between worlds. We've been monitoring Millfield for decades, watching your family struggle. But now, the time has come to prepare for what's next. Evelyn felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The battles they had fought were only the beginning. Over the following weeks, Crane introduced the Connors to a hidden world layered beneath their own, a network of protectors, scholars, and mystics who work in shadows to guard against interdimensional threats. He taught them ancient techniques of shielding, divination, and subtle magic designed to fortify their defenses. The triplets trained under Crane's guidance, learning to harness the latent powers awakened during their time beyond the veil. Jacob's quiet strength blossomed into a commanding presence. Noah's restless energy transformed into fierce agility. Emily's sensitivity became a beacon of insight and healing. Yet, the weight of their roles pressed heavily. They were no longer just children but sentinels straddling two worlds. As their training progressed, troubling signs emerged. Distortions in reality, ripples in time and space, appeared near Millfield. Strange phenomena plagued the town. Unexplained disappearances, flickering shadows in mirrors, and whispers on the wind that chilled the soul. Evelyn and Sarah organized the town's defenders, blending ancient knowledge with modern vigilance. The community forged a fragile alliance, bound by a shared determination to protect their home. One night, while patrolling the forest's edge, Emily encountered a figure cloaked in darkness, a being neither fully human nor spirit. Its eyes glowed with malevolent intelligence. Emily's voice trembled as she reported the encounter. It watches us, waiting for a chance. Crane's expression darkened. It is a harbinger, an omen of what lies beyond. The balance is shifting and the barriers weaken. The Connors realized their greatest challenge was yet to come. Meanwhile, Evelyn poured herself into uncovering the cult's history further. She discovered references to an artifact known only as the Eclipse Stone, a relic said to possess the power to open gateways across dimensions. The cult had sought it for centuries, believing it would grant ultimate dominion over the Veil. Dr. Winters joined the research, her expertise invaluable. Together, they traced the Eclipse Stone's last known location to a forgotten crypt beneath Millfield's oldest cemetery. Determined to prevent its power from falling into the wrong hands, Evelyn, Sarah, and Crane prepared for a dangerous expedition. The night of the descent was heavy with foreboding. As they entered the crypt's shadowed halls, the air grew thick with ancient dust and a palpable sense of dread. Walls bore cryptic inscriptions warning of curses and eternal guardians. Deeper within, they faced traps designed to test the mind and spirit, puzzles that twisted reality, illusions that preyed on fears and memories. At the heart of the crypt lay the Eclipse Stone, resting atop an obsidian pedestal, pulsating with dark energy. As Evelyn reached for the artifact, a surge of power erupted, flooding the chamber with blinding light and deafening silence. Visions assaulted her, fractured glimpses of other worlds, impossible geometries, and a vast cosmic entity watching through endless eyes. She staggered, clutching the stone, feeling its weight not just physical but spiritual. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the chamber, cold and commanding. The balance must be maintained, or all shall fall. The Connors knew the stakes had never been higher. They secured the Eclipse Stone and escaped the crypt, but the artifact's influence lingered, a dark shadow over Millfield's future. Back home, the triplets gathered, united in purpose. They understood their lives were bound to the Veil, to forces beyond comprehension, and to the eternal struggle between light and shadow. Evelyn looked at her children, pride and fear mingling in her heart. The impossible journey that began 35 years ago had led them here, to a future where every day was a battle for their souls and their world. Yet amidst the darkness, a single truth shone clear. Love was their greatest power, and as long as they held it, the the veil would never truly fall. The weeks that followed were a blur of preparation, training, and unease. The Connors family, now bound tightly not only by blood but by duty, worked tirelessly to master the knowledge and power that Crane and Dr. Winters provided. The weight of their legacy pressed down on them, but the triplets found strength in each other, forging a bond forged through shared trauma and hope. Evelyn watched her children grow into their roles as protectors, watchful eyes scanning horizons beyond the visible, ears attuned to whispers from unseen worlds. She herself became a pillar of strength within Millfield, bridging the gap between the ordinary townsfolk and the arcane realities that had seeped into their lives. But peace remained elusive. Strange phenomena increased in frequency. Shadowy figures glimpsed at the edges of vision, animals behaving erratically, and an oppressive silence that settled before every storm. The veil's thinning was undeniable, and the threat of something vast and unknowable loomed ever closer. One night, during a particularly fierce thunderstorm, the triplets experienced a shared vision. In their dream, they stood in an endless void, surrounded by flickering stars and dark shapes moving beyond comprehension. A colossal presence, neither male nor female, whispered in a voice that shook their bones. The balance must be restored, or oblivion will consume all. Your choices will determine the fate of worlds. Asterisk. They awoke shaken, clutching each other, the echo of that cosmic warning seared into their minds. Determined to understand, the Connors convened with Crane, Dr. Winters, and Sarah. Together, they deciphered the vision's meaning. A great cosmic cycle was nearing its end, a time when the boundaries between dimensions weakened and ancient entities stirred. Their fight was no longer local, it was cosmic. The eclipsed stone, powerful though it was, could only delay the inevitable. To protect Millfield, and perhaps the entire world, they would need to unite with other guardians scattered across the globe. Crane revealed the existence of the Conclave of Veilkeepers, a secret alliance of families and individuals charged with guarding the thresholds between realms. Their mission, to awaken, to train, and to prepare for the coming convergence. Plans were made for a journey beyond Millfield, a pilgrimage to hidden sanctuaries and forgotten sites of power where the Connors and their allies could strengthen their defenses. Evelyn felt a mixture of hope and dread. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with dangers both known and unimaginable. Yet she knew they could not face this alone. The triplets, now teenagers, embraced their roles with quiet determination. Jacob's calm wisdom often guided the group. Noah's fiery spirit pushed them forward in moments of doubt. Emily's empathy and insight kept them grounded. As they prepared to leave their home, the town gathered to bid farewell, grateful for the family that had saved them, yet fearful of the dark future. The night before departure, Evelyn sat by the fire with her children, sharing stories of the past and hopes for the future. "We've come so far," she whispered, "and no matter where this path takes us, we carry each other and the strength of those who came before." The triplets nodded, their faces illuminated by firelight and fierce resolve. The next morning, under a sky heavy with clouds and promise, the Connors family and their allies stepped into the unknown. Their journey would lead them to the far corners of the earth, to ancient temples swallowed by jungle, to frozen tundras where secrets lay buried beneath ice, and to cities where shadows danced in alleys lit only by moonlight. Each step tested their courage and resolve. Each discovery revealed more of the tapestry woven between light and darkness. And always the memory of 1983, the impossible disappearance, the sacrifice, the love that endured, fueled their fight. In the end, the Connors understood that their story was part of something far greater. An eternal struggle where hope was a weapon, love a shield, and family the light that could never be extinguished. The veil was fragile, the shadows relentless, but they would stand guard. Together, their travels took them first to the crumbling ruins of a monastery nestled high in the Carpathian Mountains, a place whispered about in the oldest of texts as the sanctuary of the Veil. The air there was thin and cold, the silence profound, broken only by the distant howl of wind threading through ancient stone corridors. It was here that the Connors met the first of the conclave, an enigmatic woman named Ilana, whose eyes held the sharpness of a hawk and the wisdom of centuries. Ilana welcomed them cautiously, but with a deep understanding of their plight. She shared stories of past guardians who had stood at the boundaries of worlds, their sacrifices echoing through time like the faintest heartbeat beneath the earth. In her possession was a tome, the Codex Noctis, written in a language forgotten by all but the most devoted scholars of the arcane. Within its pages lay rituals and protective charms powerful enough to reinforce the veil and repel the encroaching darkness. Under Ilana's guidance, the Triplets began mastering advanced techniques of warding and spiritual resilience. They learned to weave light and shadow together, shaping energies with their hands and hearts. Evelyn, Sarah, and Crane absorbed knowledge on the delicate balance of cosmic forces, preparing for what would surely be a monumental conflict. But even in the sanctuary's sacred halls, unease brewed. One night, as the wind battered the monastery's ancient walls, Jacob awoke with a start. His breath came in ragged gasps as visions of a looming eclipse and a gathering storm swirled in his mind. He stumbled to the chamber where Evelyn sat vigil, clutching the eclipse stone tightly. "The darkness is coming," he whispered. "Closer than we feared." Days later, their fears were confirmed. A sudden disturbance in the fabric of reality tore through the sanctuary, a rift shimmering like a wound in the sky. Creatures, neither fully seen nor understood, slipped through briefly before the veil sealed again. Their presence was like a shadow on the soul, cold and consuming. The conclave rallied. With chants and ancient rites, they sealed the breach, but the cost was evident. The veil's weakening was accelerating, and the final convergence drew near. From the mountains, their journey took them to the dense jungles of South America, where an underground temple lay buried beneath centuries of foliage. Here, the air was thick and humid, alive with the chorus of unseen creatures and the scent of earth and decay. The Connors and their allies navigated treacherous passages, decoding glyphs that told stories of cosmic cycles and guardianship. In a hidden chamber, they found a relic known as the Luminara Prism, an artifact said to focus pure light energy, capable of healing rifts and strengthening bonds between worlds. As Emily carefully lifted the prism, a wave of warmth spread through the chamber, soothing the group's weariness and renewing their resolve. Yet the jungle was not without its dangers. Cult remnants, still loyal to the dark entities beyond the veil, ambushed them in the dense undergrowth. The skirmish was fierce, a chaotic clash of light and shadow, steel and sorcery. The Connors fought not just for survival, but to protect the fragile hope they carried. Wounded but unbroken, they pressed onward. From the jungles, their path led to the frostbitten reaches of the Arctic, to an ancient observatory built by forgotten civilizations who had once watched the stars and guarded the portals between realms. The harsh cold was a brutal test, but the sanctuary's crystalline halls shimmered with a cold beauty and secrets long buried beneath ice. Here, Dr. Winters discovered star maps that charted cosmic alignments and cycles crucial to understanding the coming convergence. The final battle was intertwined with celestial events, and timing would be everything. As the family and their allies studied the maps, the Triplets trained relentlessly, their powers growing stronger but tempered by the wisdom they gained. One evening, under the glow of the aurora, Evelyn and Sarah shared a quiet moment outside the observatory, the vastness of the sky a mirror to their swirling fears and hopes. "We've come so far," Sarah whispered, "but I fear the hardest part is still ahead." Evelyn nodded, her gaze steady. "We carry the light, and that light will not be extinguished." The months stretched on, each day bringing new challenges and revelations. Messages arrived from other Veil Keepers, calls for aid, warnings of breaches, and reports of strange phenomena worldwide. The Connor's journey became a race against time to unite these guardians and prepare for the inevitable reckoning. Back in Millfield, shadows crept closer. Strange disappearances occurred once more, and the town's oldest residents spoke in hushed tones of the night when the veil might finally break. In the quiet before the storm, Evelyn recorded a message to her children, words of love, courage, and a reminder that no matter where the battle led them, family was the ultimate sanctuary. As the final cosmic alignment approached, the Connors gathered with their allies at the ancient site of the world's first known portal, a place where the veil was thinnest and the fate of all worlds would be decided. The air buzzed with anticipation and dread. The triplets stood at the forefront, their hands intertwined, faces radiant with determination. Evelyn watched, tears glistening, knowing this moment was the culmination of a journey that had spanned decades and dimensions. The darkness surged, the veil quivered, and the battle for existence began. The ancient ground beneath them thrummed with power, the very air thick with anticipation as the cosmic alignment neared its zenith. The gathered guardians formed a circle around the portal, an immense stone archway etched with glowing runes that pulsed in rhythm with the universe's heartbeat. The triplets stepped forward, their hands still entwined, a living conduit of light and hope amidst the gathering storm. Jacob's calm gaze met Evelyn's. Noah's restless energy simmered with newfound focus, and Emily's empathic aura radiated warmth that seemed to push back the encroaching darkness. A low hum grew from the portal, rising into a cacophony of whispers that filled the clearing, voices ancient and unknowable. Shadows lengthened and twisted, coalescing into shapes that seemed almost human, but eyes glowed with unnatural fire, and their forms shimmered between this world and the next. The cultists who had persisted through the decades, fueled by desperation and fanaticism, emerged from the darkness. They chanted in tongues long dead, their voices weaving spells to tear open the veil and unleash the entities they worshipped. Crane raised his staff, a symbol of authority and power within the conclave. "We stand as guardians between worlds," he declared. "We will not falter. We will not yield." With a collective breath, the guardians channeled their energies through the triplets, who became the beacon of resistance, a triad of light threading through the fabric of reality. The portal shimmered violently, a raging storm of energy threatening to spill forth and consume all. Jacob stepped forward, voice steady as he intoned the incantation taught by Ilana and Dr. Winters, words that bound and sealed, that wove protection like a celestial tapestry. Noah danced in fluid motion, weaving patterns of energy that clashed with the dark spells, disrupting the cult's efforts. Emily sang a haunting melody, her voice a balm that soothed the veil's tears, knitting the frayed edges with the purest of intentions. The battle raged, not of swords or guns, but of wills and power, of light and shadow locked in eternal struggle. The cultists' forms flickered, their strength waning under the triplets' radiant defense. Suddenly, a shadow surged, massive, terrifying, a presence that dwarfed even the stars above. The great entity beyond the veil manifested, its form shifting like smoke and flame, eyes that held the void itself. Fear gripped the gathered guardians, but the triplets held firm, their bond a lifeline amid chaos. Evelyn's voice rang out, unwavering. "You will not break us. Love is stronger than darkness." The entity screamed, a sound that shook the heavens, but light surged, spilling from the triplets in brilliant waves, engulfing the shadow. With a final, desperate cry, the entity was banished back beyond the veil, the portal sealed by the combined will of the guardians. Silence fell, heavy and profound. The sky above Millfield cleared, stars shining brighter than ever. The guardians collapsed, exhausted but victorious. Evelyn embraced her children, tears streaming freely, the weight of years and battles lifted by this moment of triumph. The veil was whole again. The shadows receded. and the impossible had been overcome. Years later, the town would remember the Connors family not just for the tragedy that had once shattered them, but for the courage that rebuilt hope and defended the boundaries of existence. The family photo, now aged and faded, remained on their mantelpiece, a symbol of love, loss, and the enduring strength of light against darkness. Though the shadows would always linger at the edges of the world, the Connors stood as eternal guardians, their story a beacon for all who face the unknown. And in the quiet moments, when the wind whispers through the trees of Millfield, one can almost hear a mother's lullaby, a child's laughter, and the timeless promise that love will never truly vanish.